Welcome to the Aligned and Local podcast where community takes center stage. I'm Christina Irvine, local realtor and your host, here to bring you inspiring stories from incredible business owners, community leaders, and change makers shaping our neighborhoods. Whether we're spotlighting local heroes, diving into the latest market trends, or exploring what makes this community such a special place to call home, this show is all about connection, collaboration, and celebrating the heart of where we live. So if you're ready to align with what matters most, your home, your community, and your goals, let's jump in. Today, we're actually going to have I'm really excited about this guest. His name is Matt Grander. He is a mega agent with Keller Williams, has been practicing for quite a while. And he also runs our title company, which was created specifically to save our clients money and make sure they have the best title experience. It is something I present to all of my sellers as an opportunity to use to save them some money on title in their real estate transactions. So, Matt, tell us who you are.
My name is Matt Grander, and I am the operating principal for Summit Title here in Naperville.
Okay, and tell us about Summit. What is Summit and why?
Well, what Summit Title is we're an affiliated title company of Keller Williams, and our mission is to make our KW agents look good. And really what that means, Christina, is we want to make our agents look good by helping you save money for your sellers and offer the level of service that they expect. Because what we're finding in the real estate industry is people want a category solution. They want to come to you, an excellent agent at KW, and they want you to solve all of the issues, meaning market the house, get the best price, close it efficiently, pick the inspector, pick the title company, the attorney that will do a great job. And they don't have time because they're so busy. And plus, they only buy a house every 13.1 years. They need an expert like you to find the right solution that'll save them money and offer the right level of service.
You know what I find with title too is I feel like buyers, sellers, anybody, they don't know what they don't know. So why is title important to them, and how does it affect not just their real estate experience, but their actual transition of the ownership of their home?
Yeah, well, title insurance is required around the country. And really what it does is it ensures that when you buy or sell a property that you're actually buying or selling what you think it is, that the property is what it is, and that there's no liens or nothing owed against the property. So it does protect the consumer who's buying or selling a property. So it is required. But beyond that, the interesting thing about title is that because we don't buy and sell houses every day, it's not very familiar. So it's very easy to find a title company that will charge really high prices. And you only do it every 13 years, so you don't really recognize if there's an extra hundreds or thousands of dollars. And our job, because we're affiliated with Keller Williams, is to save all of our KW agents, clients money. That is our primary goal.
Can agents who are not at Keller Williams use you to benefit their clients too?
Yes, we do take outside business as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one time you had mentioned to me that on average we save sellers about $800 on their closing costs.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a little dark secret in title, Christina, but attorneys are part of it in Chicago, and they actually make a lot of the title money that is paid by the consumer goes to the attorney. It's not really disclosed, but a lot of it goes there. So it's unfortunately, sometimes our attorneys pick the title companies that pay the most, and that charges right back to your client that you're representing.
It's very, very briefly disclosed at the closing table, but it's not really disclosed that there's options, and it's not disclosed that there's flexibility in that pricing at all.
Isn't that funny, Christina? It's disclosed at the closing table. I mean, when you're buying or selling a house, the last thing you're thinking about at the closing table is, did I get a good deal on title? And that's the good thing about you as a professional. You understand this. You're doing the work for your clients up front, and you're making sure you're picking somebody that offers the best level of service. So it's going to close on time.
Yeah.
But you're also making sure that you're saving them money. And that's what professional agents do.
When's the last time you bought or sold a house yourself? Like personal?
Yeah, I bought a house. The last property I bought was 2019.
Okay. And you can remember, even from a perspective of working inside the industry, how many decisions you have to make in that process.
Yeah. I really, I go back to something we talked about a little bit ago, but when I bought a house in South Carolina, I don't know the laws in South Carolina, so I relied on my Keller Williams agent to walk me through. And she found me insurance, and she found me an inspector, and she found me a mold guy, and she found me everybody. Yeah. And again, I go back to this because I think this is where the world's going. is people want a category solution. They want you as a professional to solve all of it, but don't solve it so that you benefit, solve it so that they benefit.
Yeah.
And that's what you get when you use Summit Title, is you do get the benefit of the lowest pricing in Chicagoland.
Well, and that's the cool thing. I'll usually present it to them as, hey, this is your choice. You can do this. And here's what I have to take that work off of your plate. And they always really appreciate it. They tend to really lean into what I offer. And so it's so very important to me that what I'm able to offer is the best of the best, because they're trusting me.
Well, Christina, you and I just talked about this today, and you said to me that, it's your fiduciary responsibility to find your client the best attorney. And the best attorney we have found, and Christina is 100% right, does real estate 100% of the time. They don't do 14 different types of law. They're really, really good, because what I found and you found is, if you use an attorney that doesn't really understand real estate law, you're going to spend 10 times more time doing it, and you may not close on time.
Yeah. Well, and I shared this story we just had an investors meeting a little bit ago, and I shared with you that I had a girl who was purchasing and wanted to use her dad because it was free, and dad was a real estate tax attorney. And so during that transaction, he made a mistake, asked for too much credit. And because you're limited as to how much credit you can get on the transaction, it ended up costing her $2,200. And so, of course, daddy hopefully made it right, I would assume. But at the end of the day, that's a really big expense. And your attorney's probably not daddy. And so using one that we know does, I'm okay with, I think a lot of our real estate attorneys do like estate planning or something also, and that's fine. But I need to know that they do a whole lot of real estate transactions, or they're not going to know to look for that. And it can be a really big mess for the clients.
You know what? You said something very important.
Yeah.
It might have been somebody's dad, and the dad said, you know what? I'll do you a favor. I'll do it for free.
Yep.
Well, free, the fee that they charge is about $600, $500, $600.
Yeah.
Free isn't free if it costs somebody $2,200 to save $600.
Yeah.
That just cost them $1,500.
Well, and $2,200 is pretty minimal in comparison to a lot of the mistakes that can be made. So it's quite wild.
And the good thing about you is that you and I have had a lot of conversations. You work with the best real estate attorneys in Chicagoland. So every time, because they're an extension of your business, just like your title company, just like your mortgage company. And you've done the work to find the best that's going to advantage your clients. So I commend you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll usually tell him too, I'm like, I don't care if your cousin's brother's monkey's uncle is going to do it for you for free. And then I'll tell him that story. And they get it. They get it. I'm lucky to work with people who really trust me. So that's kind of cool. Do you have any stories you want to share about Summit?
Well, I mean, the only thing, the fun story about Summit is 7 years ago, we weren't in the title business. And our leader, Pete Economos, said, when I was on the LC, which is the Leadership Council, he said, we need to get into ancillary services because it's the future of real estate. Because in the future, everybody's going to want one-stop shopping. And I said, I don't even know what ancillary services are. And he said, well, it's mortgage, title, and insurance. And I go, I don't know what that is. But the funny part about it is 7 years ago, I knew nothing about title. And I spent 2 years researching it and developing it. And then I ran 100 files that I did through our own company to fund it. And so it really is, it started from, 2 chairs and a table I borrowed from my church. And it's turned into a company that does thousands and thousands of transactions. So I guess the funny story is, who would have ever guessed? But the reason we did it is because we're affiliated with Keller Williams, and we wanted to advantage our agents in the marketplace. We wanted to give them another tool to get more business.
Yeah.
And so how it started is kind of weird and bizarre. But I think the reason we did it is solid.
Yeah. Well, and I know Pete picked the right guy for the job for sure. One of the things I love too, which is indirectly beneficial to our listeners, is the way Summit gives back to Keller Williams, the way you'll sponsor things for us to be more educated to then be able to provide for our clients, the way we'll close at Keller Williams offices rather than renting space otherwise, because again, that feeds back into what we're able to provide to our clients.
Yeah, and that's important. One of our main goals is we sponsor everything training and education at Keller Williams, because we have about 1,000 agents, and it's our job as an ancillary service is to provide funding for education, because the more educated all of our agents are, Christina, the more houses they're going to sell.
Yeah. As somebody who has been a mega agent and done hundreds of real estate transactions on your own, what is the craziest thing you've ever seen with title? Inside or outside of Summit?
Well, the craziest thing is I bought a house one time. I'm also a real estate investor. So I bought a condo back in 2008 that was a foreclosure. And the title got mixed up. And I bought this property. I moved in a tenant and they tried to turn the power on. And the utility said, "You're in the wrong apartment. It's across the hall from you." So title, if it's not done properly, that title company sold me a house that they didn't own. And the real estate agent sold me the house that they did not have authority to sell. And so luckily it worked out. We moved the tenant from one side of the hall to the other, painted the place real quickly and moved him in. But if I made a stink about it, that would have been a $250,000 title claim.
That is wild.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So hold on. So wrong PIN number and unit number, I assume?
Yep.
Both?
Yep.
Okay. So then who owned the unit that your tenant initially moved into?
Don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Don't know. But it was scary.
That could have been some breaking and entering. I mean, you would have been protected, obviously, because you had proof that, this is what happened. But
right.
Oh my goodness. That is wild.
It is wild. It is wild. But some other crazy things happen. And this is what's really, I love this about this business is, we have very close relationships with the biggest underwriters in America. And when something goes wrong, we can go to them. And so a lot of times when we go to the president of, let's say, First American or Old Republic Title and get them involved, sometimes they can solve problems that other people can't. Because sometimes like an IRS lien, you can't sell a home.
Yeah.
And so, the craziest thing that has happened in a good way is we've had a couple of deals on like, $1 million property where it was another KW agent and I was the lister and title got really jacked up. And everybody in our title business said, this is not going to happen. We're not going to be able to close this. And then we went all the way to the top at our underwriter and we saved the deal. And so like crazy stuff like that does happen if you have the right relationships.
Yeah, that's another thing that I really appreciate is like, if there is an issue or a question or a concern and I can't get information from the attorney fast enough, or I don't know, whatever the reason is, I don't have to reach out to the title company myself very often, but there have been instances. And the amount of help that I'm able to get if I have to call a different title company versus ours is completely different. And it does impact the client's experience.
Well, you know what I find, Christina, is the fact we have really, really talented people that run our title company. We have people that have been doing it 30 years. We have a real estate attorney that works on our team. Yeah. So we don't have to go outside. Like if you have a problem with one of your clients, you walk up a couple set of stairs and you talk to Kim or Laura. And if they can't answer it, they talk to the top brass at our underwriter and you're going to have an answer real fast.
Title is one of the many things in a transaction that the clients almost never see the problems. Very seldom do they ever know they happened, but they're the things that really do make the big difference. I tell people all the time, I'm not here to do your perfect transaction. I'm here to solve the problems that you may or may not know happened that are going to cost you a whole lot of money. Yeah. And it's hard for them to get it tangibly, but I think just what we shared today is going to be something that's going to be really helpful for people to understand what happens behind the scenes.
It is. I think it's like the duck on top of the water. Like you're the duck on top of the water. You're smooth because you're taking care of all these problems for your client. Under the water, you're paddling real fast and you're working with the right companies that can solve the problem so that your consumer can do what they do for a living and not get stressed out about buying or selling a property because you've taken care of everything with the right partners. Yeah, and that internal communication just makes a huge difference. Same with the attorneys. We were talking about that earlier too, that of course they can pick their own attorneys and some people do, and that's fine, no problem. What's interesting about that? Different. Yeah, that's interesting, Christina, because I have a really talented lady that's been working on a real estate team for about 7 or 8 years. Yeah. And she told me, she goes, if you pick an attorney that doesn't really understand real estate, she goes, it takes me 10 times more time to manage the transaction than if we use the attorney that really understands what we're doing. And they're only focused on one thing. Yeah. So it's not only, it wastes the consumer's time, but it also wastes our time. Agreed. And even if it's an attorney who does a lot of real estate transactions, but they're not communicating with me. Yeah.
which I find a lot when people pick their own attorneys, which is why I'm like, I want you to feel comfortable. I'm not going to push you to use my attorney because I want you to trust me and I want you to know you have those options. But there is a difference. And so, if your attorney doesn't tell me what's going on and you're calling me to ask me what's going on, I don't know the answer.
Right. Yeah.
And so, it's just a really interesting perspective. And it is kind of cool to be able to tie all those pieces together. When you were a kid, what do you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a business person. I saw my mom, who sold real estate.
I don't know if I knew that.
Who was divorced. And when I was 15, and she, in 1978, earned a very, very good salary. And all of my friends, it was really funny, all my friends thought, because I was a baseball player, they thought, oh, if you need help buying baseball shoes and clothes, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't realize that my mother was making 4 times what their father was making selling real estate.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do that one day.
I was 15 when I told my mom I wanted to be a realtor, and they
right?
talked me out of it. Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you that story, but
No.
I ended up going to school for accounting because they talked me out of it. Got into a car wreck, couldn't do that anymore. I was already living on my own, and I took an outside sales position, built my whole life on commission.
Yeah.
And then woke up in 2018 and went, oh crap, I didn't do the thing I wanted to do, but built my whole life on the reason I didn't do it.
Well, I kind of did the same thing. So when I got out of college, I got into the metals industry. So I was a professional salesperson.
Yeah.
And then I got into management and I got into executive management.
Yeah.
And then I started my own metals company. And in 2007, I sold it. And I looked around and I didn't work for a year. I just took a year off to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, what do I really want to do? And I thought about, I worked for a builder when I was a kid.
Yeah.
For time I was 7 till 12. And then I saw my mom create a great life for our family.
Yeah.
And so I started studying and I became an investor in real estate. And then after I dealt with a bunch of agents, I thought, wow, I could do this. And
they're not that smart.
Yeah, well,
some of them,
especially in distressed properties like REO and short sales,
mm-hmm.
it's a whole different world. But
yeah,
but I looked at it and I thought, my mom did a great job. She showed us how it was done, and I'm going to make her proud and do it as well as she did it.
I love it. What's your favorite thing about working in this industry on the real estate side of it?
Real estate is just so much fun. Every situation is different. Like you just deal with so many different interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they go really well and sometimes they don't, depending on what people's needs are and if you can meet them. But the fun part to me is it's almost like opening up a present on Christmas. Like sometimes you walk into somebody's house, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing is the people that I like to work with the most take our advice and they listen to what we do because we do it all day long.
Well, it makes it easier for everybody, including them, right?
Yeah.
They get a better result.
And the ones that are hard are the ones that think that they can look at it on the internet and they have all the information. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way.
Sometimes having all the information available at their fingertips does them so much more harm than good.
Yeah.
They know enough to be dangerous. They try to make decisions on their own. I just actually was talking to a for sale by owner earlier, and I was like, I understand that you're trying to save a commission, and that's fine. I respect that. This market, I get it. Your house is probably going to sell. What you don't understand is that if you pick an agent to list your home for you and you don't walk away with more money in your pocket, despite the fact that you had to pay that commission, you just picked the wrong agent. So let's learn how to pick the right agent rather than trying to learn how to do something I spend hundreds of hours learning.
Yeah. My mom taught me very young. When I was an investor, Christina, she said, do not ever not use an agent.
Yeah.
And she's right because, I used to do some for sale by owners and people don't realize they might save 5 or 6%, but on average, the National Association of Realtors says that you spend about 15 or 20% more if you're not represented by a professional agent like yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're going to miss everything and you don't negotiate every day. You don't have the best vendors for mortgage and title and all these other things. They are going to spend more money.
Well, and I had the lady I spoke to earlier. It was a really interesting conversation because I started the conversation with, hey, because like if I know they're willing to pay a buyer's agent commission, I have a pretty good idea that I'm halfway there. Right now, all I have to do is make you understand the sell side and where the value comes from using me. And so I'd asked her, if we brought you a buyer, are you open to paying a buyer's agency commission? And she actually brought up the laws that changed as if I didn't know about them.
Yeah, right.
And it was like, well, that's completely negotiable now. And I'm like, absolutely it is. And it took a while to get to the point of the conversation, but where you do realize you're paying that commission regardless of if you're actually paying that commission or not. It's either inside the sale price or outside of the sale price. And I had to break it down for her. If the commission, I'm just picking easy numbers, is $5,000 and we're selling the house for $250,000. Yes, those numbers don't match, but they're going to offer you $250,000 and ask you to pay the buyer's agency commission, or they're going to offer you $245,000. you're paying it anyway. So why don't you want representation for yourself?
It does boggle me. I have a great story for you. Yeah. So my son, who's my business partner, we sold a house in Naperville. It was a townhouse, and we sold it for $247,000. Yep. And when we were there, we saw a little for sale by owner in the window. And so my son was looking for a house. So he goes, "Oh, I'm going to call them, see what they want." And the lady goes, "Well, we're on the internet." And where? "Oh, well, we're a private company that's selling it, so it's on our site, and you can go take a look at the video and see." So he did, and she met him over there, and he said, "Well, what would you like for the house?" And she said, "175." And it was worth 250 to 270, and my son offered 165, and disclosed that he was an agent, and she accepted it. So, like, in terms of like making 20-30% less,
she left like $80,000.
She left a lot of money on the table.
That's sad.
And she was trying to save 5 or 6%, Christina. Yeah. Like, isn't that sad?
And it's hard because there's almost this part of you that has to feel guilty, right? Like and she was going to sell to someone for that price. And so how could you pass on? Yeah, that's...
I mean, it's not, that's why you don't sell your home by yourself, because A, you overvalue it, or B, you undervalue it.
Well, when you overvalue it, you undersell it anyway. Yeah. It just drives down the price when you overprice them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why you need a professional like you that can do a professional evaluation, a CMA, show somebody what all the comparables are, give them the facts, not what you feel and what you think, but what the market is telling you.
Well, and do more than put it in the MLS too, right? Yeah. So you mentioned one of your children moving to New York City.
Yeah.
Are you licensed there?
No, I'm not licensed there. Keller Williams is the biggest network in America. Yeah. We have, I think, around 200,000 agents, and it's very easy for us as leaders, you and I, we can find the best agents in America. And I called up the counterpart of the regional director here. Pete Economos is our regional director, and he gave me Rich Amato. And I called Rich and said, "Rich, this is too important. Like, this is my son and my grandkids, and they're going to live in this part of the Bronx. Like, who's the person?" And he said, "Well, here's my team leader." And I talked to him, and he gave me somebody that's on the ALC, somebody that is coached.
What's the ALC?
The Agent Leadership Council. And so, and he's one of the best buyers agents they have. Yeah. And so I wasn't going to take a gamble on finding the best agent.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing about what we do. And I've had, unfortunately, some people who think like, "Oh, you're in Illinois, and so you can't help so-and-so in California." And I'm like, absolutely, let me interview your agent, because you don't know what to ask to know if they're a good agent. I do.
You know what's interesting, Christina? I love this. Is 90% of the real estate in this country is sold by 10% of us. Yeah. And you're the top 10 for sure. You understand this on a high level. And I say this to people. I say, I can't allow you to find an average agent to buy or sell your house in Richmond, Virginia, or Charleston, South Carolina. I do this for a living. I'm really good at it, just as are you. I can discern really quickly by production, by how long they've been doing it, by what their pedigree is. I can figure it out real fast. I can get you a top 10% agent. And it's important for me that you don't end up with an average agent. So let me do the work. It's not going to cost you anything. Yeah. It's really, it's a conversation that I didn't have a lot when I first got into real estate. Yeah. But I think I've done 7 referrals in the last month.
When I was at my previous brokerage, I was actually recognized as the top outgoing referrer, because I hated when people were moving somewhere else, or they had their cousin's monkey's uncle who did.
Oh, yeah.
And I would hear their terrible stories, and I'm like, but that didn't have to happen. Call me first 100% of the time. If I don't have somebody, I'll find somebody. But it kind of became this, and I want to do more work talking about it, but this let me interview your agent program, right? Because again, they don't know what makes a good agent. And that's one of the things about these laws that changed with commission and having to sign a buyer's agency agreement that freaks me out the most. And I've been telling all my people that I'm like, if you not only do you lose the opportunity for me to represent you, right? But you or someone you love clicks on Zillow, has an agent show up, you now have to sign a buyer's agency agreement to see that home. It was funny because I was actually having this conversation with a client that I got from Zillow. And I was like, you don't know who's coming. You don't know who's showing up. You don't know what kind of representation they're getting. We need to make sure, it's our job to make sure, it's your job. You have a good agent to make sure that they don't end up in that situation. And he laughed. He was like, "Well, it worked out okay for me." I'm like, "It did. And you got really lucky, because I'm not your average agent. That isn't what happens for everybody, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think, it's sort of like a resume, Christine. Everybody looks good on paper.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the consumer only has Zillow. That's all they have to look up who an agent is.
Yeah.
They can't dig deep. They don't have access to the MLSs. They don't have access to the Keller Williams data. They don't have access to, somebody can walk through your door and tell you that they sold 100 houses.
Yeah.
And they could just tell you a fabrication, and it could be the first one.
Oh no.
It could be the first one. And you as the consumer don't really realize that.
Yeah.
But you can sort through that. If you have a conversation for 90 seconds with me or anybody, you're going to know who they are.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not opposed to giving a new agent a chance, right? Like, I was a new agent before too.
Yeah.
However, I was smart enough to not do it by myself. I had the partnership with somebody who had the experience to make sure I didn't miss the things,
Yeah.
And even now, like, I have a commercial transaction. It's a 5-unit building with a regular client of mine.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do it for him. I also knew that I don't have experience with commercial property. And so I partnered with somebody who does a lot with investors, because I'm more of a residential. I don't mind working with investors, but a lot of the time prior to this, I didn't have a lot of investor knowledge at all. This was just a client that I didn't want to not do the work for, but I was happy to take half the commission to make sure he was taken care of the way I wanted to.
Sure.
Not just by me, but with the appropriate knowledge behind us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're about to head out on vacation?
I am.
Where are you headed?
I have a second home in Charleston, South Carolina,
Mhm.
and I spend 3 or 4 months a year there. And I'm going down to hang out with some friends and go fishing. And if the weather's nice enough, play a little golf.
Nice. How long will we be there for this time?
Just 10 days.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well,
And I got to come back and get to work. Sell some more houses.
well, you deserve it. I hope you have a lot of fun. Thanks for coming. And thanks everybody else for tuning in to the Aligned and Local podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired and connected to the amazing people and businesses that make our community thrive. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us share these incredible stories with even more people. And remember, when you're looking to buy, sell, or refinance, I'm here to help you navigate your real estate and mortgage needs with ease. Let's align your goals with your perfect plan for your future.